99.3 Talk FM. It's Bryan Houston's Sports Radio Live, your station for Dallas Cowboys football. Brought to you by Tyler Ford. Here's Bryan Houston.
Good afternoon. Welcome back on this Tuesday afternoon. Beautiful afternoon. The colors are spectacular.
It looks fantastic.
Except that it's almost December, and this should have happened about a month and a half ago.
And maybe we'll get snow by Christmas. You don't know. They say
or March.
We're going to have a cold winter.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It doesn't. It's 60 now. It's lovely.
It's East Texas. Who knows? All right, we are really excited to have on our show once again. We had him on a few months ago, and he's back with us today from Touchdown Radio. He does a show on Sirius XM as well. He's also going to be in the booth this weekend for the radio broadcast, the Kansas State-Texas ball game up in Manhattan. And with us right now on the APEC VIP hotline, cutting-edge training for the serious athlete, apecgo.com, the 1992 Heisman Trophy winner, Gino Torretta. How you doing, Gino?
I'm doing good. You mean my flight to LaGuardia? That doesn't seem like the same Manhattan.
No, I don't think so. No, yeah, it's a long way from the Manhattan that you were in a long time ago, right? Nice thought, though. Wouldn't you rather do the ball game in Manhattan? Manhattan.
I don't know. Down here in Miami, the weather's beautiful in the winter.
Good point.
We don't have cold down here right now.
Good point. Well, all right. Well, hey, it's great talking to you. Thanks for coming on. First Heisman talk. Of course, everybody's going crazy. When we last talked, I think you had just come off of doing either the Florida A&M game or the LSU A&M game on the radio, and you had a chance to see Johnny Manziel for yourself. Now it's down to, it looks like, Johnny Manziel or Manti Te'o. You have a vote as a Heisman Trophy winner. Who are you going to vote for?
I don't know who I'm going to vote for right now. I think that the guys that I've seen firsthand, I would say this of the player, getting a chance to see every weekend, the three best performances I saw was Braxton Miller, Johnny Manziel, and Jadeveon Clowney, the defensive end for South Carolina. And, I'm looking forward to getting to see Colin Klein this weekend. And, he's definitely in the mix. I think, Aaron Murray at Georgia's had an outstanding season. Will he, be able to do something against Alabama? We'll see. But the three guys I mentioned are the three guys that I saw with my own eyes that were above and beyond everybody else that I've seen this season.
As a voter, do you have any problem with voting for a freshman or B, a linebacker as a Heisman Trophy candidate?
I don't, but seeing as the defensive player I mentioned probably isn't the one that you're mentioning.
Right. I just don't ever hear his name mentioned in the top five.
You can probably go with my view there.
Right. So you got quarterbacks stick together. I know how that works.
Well, I just, to me, I've seen enough of Notre Dame, and I think Golston is a big part of why they're undefeated. And I think that Te'o is in the discussion because his team is undefeated, and that's not taking anything away from him as a great player. But to me, a defensive player has got to be a guy that is truly disruptive on every single play. And I saw with my own eyes Clowney at the end position. There's very few guys like a Warren Sapp who was in the top five, guys that can be truly disruptive every single play. Those are the guys that get to New York, and I think that that's at least how I look at and how I would consider for my vote.
Things have changed a lot, too, since you won the Heisman. It used to be that you had to have like a year's advance notice and a full-blown campaign, right?
I didn't, but yeah, some schools have the full. I remember the billboard for Joey Harrington in Oregon.
Bad news there.
So usually those don't work out too well. I'd say there's a high percentage that don't. I think what's going to be interesting this year is seeing, you've heard and I've heard where certain voters won't vote for a freshman, certain voters, literally would not vote for Manziel because he never talked to the press, and just ridiculous things to me. It's like, who cares if the guy's a freshman? Hell, if a guy's a sophomore in high school and could do what he did, and fine, vote for him.
Exactly.
And that's what, like, I posed a question today on Sirius. I'm like, if he wasn't a freshman, would we even be having this debate? His numbers are better than Cam Newton, and everybody said those numbers would never be touched. The numbers are better than Tim Tebow. Oh, by the way, to me, it's like you can't change your measuring stick. The kid's had an unbelievable season. And, I can remember in the Arkansas game, I was like, yeah, he had a great season. And I think it was a combination. Arkansas was bad and Texas A&M had a great day. But at the end of the day, to throw for 430, I think, and to run for $130, and he was out in the middle of the fourth quarter. I mean, that was just, to me, as impressive as you get.
I'm having a hard time imagining anybody else other than Manziel, and that's not because I live in Texas and I'm not a big Aggie fan. The guy's numbers just leap off the page.
There's no question. And the question is if Aaron Murray lights up Alabama, that there's more stock in that. Mm-hmm. And I think that obviously Johnny Manziel, who people weren't really paying attention to, I think are the same people that said, Texas A&M and Missouri were going to stink in the SEC for 4 years until they'd be any good. And
I was one of those people. Shows what I know.
And all of a sudden, it's a different story. And I think that the thing is with the award, and I'm sure you can't say, well, this kid's got 3 more years in college. He'll have as good a season next year. He can win it next year, because you never know. You know what I mean? You can follow up a great season with another good season, but maybe somebody else has a better season.
Yep.
I mean, I looked at when Tim Tebow won as a sophomore. His stats were so unreal and so good, he couldn't even match his own stats. Mm-hmm. And he might have been better as a junior than he was when he was a sophomore when he won, but because he didn't match his own stats, then Sam Bradford throws for 50 some god-awful touchdown amount, and he wins it. So, and that to me is I just hope that people, and I always vote who I think is the best player. And sometimes the 3 guys I vote for, none of them are even in New York. And I truly hope that people that have votes look at stats all across the board and vote for the person they think is the best, not who somebody else does or somebody told them to on TV.
Right. All right, so now this weekend you do the Kansas State-Texas game. There was a time when that game might have meant something massive. It's still a very important ball game for Kansas State. They can win the Big 12 championship if they can win the ball game. Talk a little bit about that ball game and what you expect this weekend.
Well, I think obviously we'd love to have K-State still be undefeated, and talking with the Heisman, obviously with Colin Klein, there's still a lot of attention. And the thing that's amazing to me is he went from the Heisman was supposed to be his to lose to not being on some people's ballots. I mean, that should tell you the ridiculous nature of it. But it is. It's a BCS berth. A bowl berth, and Kansas State, who's just had a miraculous turnaround under Coach Snyder, and I think that Texas is they're trying to figure out, is their quarterback going to be Ash? Is the quarterback going to be McCoy for next year? And it's more about building for next season. So I think that this is a huge game, and obviously it keeps K-State in the national picture and into a BCS bowl game.
What's your opinion of Colin Klein?
Amazing. To me, it's one of those things where it might not look pretty every single snap, but at the end of the day, when you look at stats and you look at wins and you look at the consistency that he's had, I trust me, I've seen him dismantle my own alma mater a couple times in the last 2 years, and you just kind of shake your head. And I can remember probably a guy that I would think that he was similar to. I remember watching Phillip Rivers in college and thinking like, that's not impressive. That's, wow, the ball kind of dropped in there at the right spot, and the guy's still doing it in the National Football League. So I just, to me, it might not be prototypical or look the prettiest, but he's pretty darn good.
The only question we have around here is, how do you explain a team that was ranked #1 in the nation going into Waco and getting beat by 28 by a team with one of the worst defenses in the country?
Well, I think that, to get to #1 is very hard. And I think that what people don't realize, when you get there, then everybody else is gunning for you and everybody else is giving you their best shot. And I think that when you have a team that hasn't experienced that before, I think that that's what happens. And I think that the Big 12 to me, top to bottom, is the best conference in college football right now. I mean, they've been the most consistent. People can say, well, their defenses aren't as good as the SEC. Well, I would also say, well, the offenses in the SEC aren't as good as the offenses in the Big 12. So I think there's two sides to that argument, and I think that it goes to show with college football, with reduced scholarships down to 85, there is a lot more parity. When I played, the number 25 team wasn't even sniffing the best team in the country's jockstrap, and now all of a sudden you can get the 50th ranked team are going to beat a number 1 team at times because of the parity in college football now.
It's crazy stuff. Now, the other thing I'll ask you about, because it has something to do with the same kind of situation that's going on with your alma mater. You're going to see a Texas team that if they lose this weekend, they finish the year at 8-4, and there's lots of anger coming out of Austin right now because the people in Austin feel entitled to being 11-1 and playing for national championship every year. And literally, they're talking about now that the noise is that some of the real supporters behind the scenes of Mac Brown and DeLoss Dodds have gotten fed up, and they're talking behind the scenes to Gary Patterson. And, what do you make of all of that?
Well, it's a good thing academics are priority number 1 in college football.
Yeah, right. Sure it is.
I would say this. I would say that it's awful tough to get to the top of the mountain, but it's even harder to stay there. And I think that every coach is going to go through some some rising tide and low tide times, and the thing, as long as Texas feels that Coach Brown gives them the best opportunity. I know they've made some changes in staff, and I think that's what we're seeing in college football across the country. Back when I played, the staffs were together. When Jimmy Johnson was here, his whole staff went to coach the Cowboys. And the whole staff came in with Dennis Erickson. They all stayed together. But what you're seeing nowadays in college football, you get Muschamp picked off. You get the top assistants picked off by other programs to be the head coach. And then all of a sudden you're replacing these guys. It's not so easy to replace great assistant coaches. And I think those are the kinds of things that every great program goes through. And, to me, I think that I don't know who has more expectations across the country that are just above and beyond a little bit of absurd, because I think everybody expects their team to win a national championship, and even though we all know that can't happen.
Well, another thing that's changed a lot is back when you played. They would give a coach 5 years; they'd give him an entire recruiting class. Now you see coaches getting fired after 2 years.
Well, Ellis Johnson got fired after one at Southern Miss today.
Yeah.
And that to me is just a joke. It's almost like the fans think, hey, it's I can remember, and even Oklahoma. Stoops can win 10 every year, and it's like it's not enough. And don't forget, it wasn't too long ago that Steve Spurrier left Florida because the Gator fans weren't happy with just winning the SEC East or the SEC. They expect to be in a national championship every single year, and he left because of those expectations, which were just ridiculous. And I think that I don't know what the happy medium is, but it seems like with the social media, with message boards and all this stuff, it's such a it took less than an hour after Mark Stoops was announced as head coach at Kentucky. There's already fire Mark Stoops on Twitter. That to me is just it's like and the fans everywhere. We were fans were calling today from NC State, and I'm like, you guys are delusional. You're NC State. Look in the mirror. When was NC State a factor in the national football? Not basketball. I'm talking football.
Yeah.
And it's just like they think Tom O'Brien took his team to a bowl game 3 years in a row. And it's NC State, right?
Yeah.
If I say NC State, do you think of football?
No.
Probably not. Okay.
No. Yeah, you're right. Now, let me ask you about your alma mater. Is Al Golden going to leave Miami, you think?
I don't think so. I mean, he came out today and said his wife would cry, which obviously, you get attached to this environment down here in Miami, and it's awful nice when it's November 27th and it's 80 degrees outside and nice and cool at night. So you can become accustomed to this place, and I think that he seems to have righted the ship, and hopefully, who knows what's going on with the NC2A. I mean, their latest tactic of sending letters to all the some ex-players and saying, if you don't talk, you're complicit and you're guilty, and we're going to penalize your university, which is just unbelievable that an institution can do that. But they did it, and hopefully we can figure out what the NC2A is going to do. Bring the penalty down, and they move forward.
Man, it just never ends over there. One other question. This weekend, the BCS semifinal game is the Alabama-Georgia to play Notre Dame for the BCS championship. Who you got in that ball game, Bama-Georgia?
It's funny because I think that Nick Saban's comments were interesting. Like, hey, the loser of this game shouldn't be going to the Cap One Bowl. It should be going to the Sugar Bowl, and it shouldn't be Florida. I didn't know if that was a hedge, knowing that his team might be banged up and he's not too confident, or that's kind of what his opinion was, because there's always a method to his madness.
Oh yeah.
But, I think that Georgia ran into a buzzsaw against South Carolina on the road, and South Carolina could have beat anybody in the country that night, and it just so happened it was Georgia that came to town, and Georgia has the talent and skills to beat anybody in the country, and Alabama's weakness is their secondary, and Georgia's strength is you got a quarterback that's phenomenal under center. So I think anything can happen in that game. I don't think they're near as dominant as they were last year. God forbid, would they have 6 first-round picks on their defense last year? So they're not where they were last year. And I think Georgia can win it. It should be a home game for them in the Atlanta Dome, and we'll see what happens there.
It's going to be fun. Hey, Gino, thank you very much for coming on with us. We appreciate it.
No problem. I'll talk to you again.
Great, good stuff. Heisman Trophy winner Gino Torretta. He's broadcasting the Kansas State-Texas game this weekend, and we appreciate him coming on 99.3 Talk FM, the sports talk of East Texas. Coming up, Matthew